We now have the book launch of Vedas Made Simple, authored by Dr. Pariksith Singh, physician, entrepreneur, writer. This will be followed by a discussion with Dushyant Sridhar, Vedic speaker, writer, researcher, and the session will be moderated by Sampadananda Mishra, Director, Center for Human Sciences, Rishikut University.
Namaskar to all of you again. So very interesting session and very interesting title, The Veda Made Simple. The first question comes, can Veda be made simple? And at the same time, we also need such works where Veda is made simple. This is a book entirely inspired by the interpretation of Sri Aurobindo. And we have, I am sandwiched between two. On one side, you have the whole tradition. And on one side, you have Sri Aurobindo, who plays a lot with the tradition, keeping the tradition intact. He takes the tradition forward in a very different way. And both again are going to discuss on something which is very, very fundamental to the Sanatana Dharma. Now, Sri Aurobindo, he takes the Veda into a very higher height in the sense that he says that I seek not science, I seek not religion, I seek not theosophy, I seek the Veda. And there he uses a word, Veda, the concealed divinity in Hinduism. And then he goes on speaking about the secret of the Veda. Secret of the Veda, again, is a marvelous work and many of you must be familiar with. But in essence, I'll just take 2 minutes to give a little introduction to why the Veda, the secret of the Veda, how it has been revealed to the mass by Sri Aurobindo. And here in this book, there are 6 W's. It's not just why, the when, what, how, not how, where. So the 6 W's are answered by Pariksith ji. Now, in order to understand the Veda and its connect with the tradition that continues with the Puranas, with the Mahabharata, with Ramayana, we need to understand the 4 important realizations of the Vedic rishis. The very first realization of the Vedic rishis is that there is a world, there is a light, there is a truth, there is a delight which is much higher than the world in which we live, the light that we see, the truth that we experience here. This is the first realization, that there is something higher. The second realization is that if there is something higher, then the man must make sincere effort and then find the path to attain to that higher. Then the third realization is that there is a constant battle which goes on, a battle between the forces of darkness, the forces of light, the Devas and Asuras, the Vrutras, Panis and Dasyus, with the Devas. And in this battle, man must get victory. And in order to get victory over the dark forces, the falsehood, the asuras, man must keep divine as his comrade. Like Arjuna kept Krishna beside him always. And the last realization of the Vedic rishis is Ekam Sat Vipra Bahudha Vadanti. So these four realizations, if we keep in mind and then evaluate Sanatana Dharma or any aspect of Sanatana Dharma, much of the things becomes clear. And then the hardcore symbolism that the Veda has. Sri Aurobindo, while interpreting the Veda, he keeps the tradition alive. At the same time, he goes beyond the tradition in the sense that we have Sayanacharya's great commentary. Sri Aurobindo appreciates Sayana like anything, because without reading Sayana, Veda will not be understood properly. But at the same time, he is also highly critical of the inconsistency that Sayana's commentary has. There are plenty of examples. We will not go deep into that. But what are the three things that Sri Aurobindo has in the Veda? The interpretation of Sri Aurobindo's Veda makes is unique. First is his own realization. He had realized many of the Vedic deities before he came in contact with the Veda. Ila, Saraswati, Mahi, Bharati, Sarama, Dakshina. These were the deities belonging to the supramental world that he realized before he came in contact with the Veda. So, first realization, his own realization. Second is a philology, a new science of language that he had received from Sri Krishna. Then there is a greater psychology. So, if we take realization, his own realization, a greater psychology, and philology, these three are central to Sri Aurobindo's interpretation. So, this being the situation, the secret of the Veda or the interpretation of the Veda is made simple in this book. So, I would start like this. Pariksith ji, I wish that you just give your experience of writing this book. What inspired you writing this book? And then what approach you have taken in presenting the secret of the Veda?
Thank you, Sampadanandji. Thank you, Dushyantji. My essential approach to the Veda is inspired by Sri Aurobindo. And the need was very simple. My 10-year-old studying in the US, my firstborn daughter, she went to school and they taught her that Hinduism is polytheism. And she comes to me and she's telling me, see, all these are monotheism and Hinduism is polytheism. What does it mean? And I said, it is not polytheism. But to a 10-year-old, I'm trying to argue with a book that the teacher has given, and the teacher's word to them is set in stone, whereas I'm just the dad, right? Who's going to listen to me? So I said, I will write books for you so you understand them. This was 15 years ago. And this is something that has stayed with me, because the way we are presenting our traditions, our Sanskriti, Sabhyata, Dharma to the world, we have somewhere dropped the ball. And our own youngsters, the youth, is how many grew up studying the Veda? We are scared of it. First time someone picks it up, someone borrows a book from me, they return it the next day, because after the third shloka, nothing is entering the head, because they don't understand the layers of meaning. What a beautiful work of literature. And I'm just talking as literature. What a beautiful symbolism, the sound, the root sounds, how they are brought up, the mantras, but we do not touch it. We do not touch one of the most beautiful, the most revered works in our whole Sanskriti. And what is wrong with us? So obviously, I have to do something about it, and that's why I wrote it, trying to make it simple for the youngster. Someone who will not go to a Gurukul to train for 10 years, yet he knows enough about it to have a sense of what we have. And if out of say 100 people, 10 start researching it and studying it, then the value of this book is done. And as I wrote jokingly, if even one person starts appreciating, respecting, reading the Veda, I have written for that person that Ekam Sat. That was a joke, but that's why I wrote it. So this is the reason, and I've tried to make it very simple, using the little I know over the years of studying about our Adhyatma. And really, it is an Adhyatmic study, but I've used modern interpretations. I've taken the Western writers, the Eastern writers, and tried to give us a simple kind of a summary, a gist. And I hope more and more people, the fear factor will go away after this, and people will approach it with more wonder, with awe, with respect for our most valuable Shruti. So that is what I try.
Thank you. So, when we look at the Veda, traditionally, we have the Adhi Bhautika interpretation, we have the Adhi Daivika interpretation, we have the Adhyatmika interpretation. And when we come to the modern time, we have a scientific interpretation of the Veda, we have a geographical interpretation of the Veda, we have a astronomical interpretation of Veda, and there is no end to it from the tradition, from the European and Western scholars and the Indian scholars, modern Indian scholars, and then stalwarts like Madhusudan Ojha and various other Vidwans who have commented on the Veda, and then we have this whole gamut of literature which help us understanding the Veda. Now, this being the situation, I would like to request you to enlighten this audience about the three levels of interpretation of the Veda: Adhibhautika, Adhidaivika, and Adhyatmika.
Namaskaram to all of you. First of all, immense congratulations to Sri Pariksith ji for this beautiful book. From my very little understanding of our Upabrahmanams, we have known of two Parikshiths. Parikshith 1.0 is the one who bequeathed the essence of the Veda Vedanta, and he posed questions to Shuka Brahman. And the compendium of the questions and answers were put together as Srimad Bhagavatam. We have the Upodghata Shlokam. Nigama kalpataroho galitam phalam shukamukat amritadrava sanyutam pibata bhagavata rasamalayam muhuraho rasikaha bhuvi bhavukaha. Parikshit's questions and answers were as a result of the ultimatum that was set due to the curse of Shringi, who said that he will die of the bite of a snake of virulent poison called Takshaka. So in 7 days, 24x7, he posed these questions, and this compendium becomes the 12 skandhas of Srimad Bhagavatam. Parikshit was also blessed with the Lord going around him in the amniotic sac inside his mother Uttara's womb. So that was Parikshit 1.0. Parikshit 2.0 has made Vedas simple. So if at all you want your children to be named to be contributing to the Vedic tradition, here is one name. So kudos and accolades to Parikshit ji. And there's another connection also. You know what? Krishna, whenever he's referred to in Sri Mahabharatam and Srimad Bhagavatam, he's always called as the one with the eyes of the new petals of a newly blossomed lotus. Even when Duryodhana has to abscond him, he has to admonish him. He says, Bhishma Drona Vratikramya Mamschaiva Madhusudana Kimartham Pundarikaksha Dugdham Rishabhavojanam. You have not come to my house and you do not have the audacity to go to the house of Drona and Bhishma, but you, O lotus-eyed one, even while scolding. So, the lotus eye of Krishna is inseparable from Parikshit. So from this Pariksith is Aravinda, who was Aurobindo, who has the eyes of the lotus. So he's blessed by Aurobindo that way. Coming to the question of how sentences and vakyams of the Vedas are interpreted. All our acharyas, we have had a galaxy, a plethora of acharyas who have commented on the Vedas. Of course, Sayanacharya, we owe a lot to. We have had Bhattabhaskara before him. We had Uvatacharya, Mahidharacharya, and we have had Rangarama Muni comment on certain portions. There is always a difference. First of all, I hope I can add a few points here. I'm sure a lot of them in the audience may know of this. In most languages, when we interpret poetic or prose verses, we base that on the vocabulary and the context. Since we are in a union territory which doesn't sell t-shirts of Hindi Teriyadu, in Hindi, we say kal mein aaya tha, kal mein aunga. The spelling for kal is the same, but it is interpreted as yesterday or tomorrow based on the verb that follows it. Aaya tha, aunga. In most languages, it is that way. But in Vedam, there is a difference. Let's say in Taitriya Aranyakam, you get this Veda Vakyam, ajaha, the sound goes up. In Brihadaranyakam, there is a Vakyam which says ajaha. Same spelling, ajaha. But when it goes up, it means Brahma. When it goes down, it means the goat. So you interpret Veda Vakyam based on the sound, just not on the word. This is where most of the foreign interpreters went wrong. You have not learned the Vedas. You do not have a knowledge about the line. But wherever it was needed to be interpreted as Brahma, they will interpret only as goat. Vedam itself gives an example of the Vakyam Indra Shatru. How Indra Shatru Shabdam is used in Tatpurusha Samasam and Bahuvrihi Samasam and has to be interpreted. So to this question posed by a great Mahavidwan, Sampadananda Swami Mishraji, as to how Vedas can be construed or interpreted, there are three levels most of the acharyas agree to. First, it has to determine the samskara for which it was born. For example, let us take Purusha Suktam. Vedeshu Paurusham Suktam Dharmashastreshu Manavam Bharate Bhagavad Gita Puraneshu Cha Vaishnavam. It's a shloka that we all learn when we begin. In this interpretation, let's take Purusha Suktam. Sahasra Shirishaf Purushaha. Sahasrakshas Sahastrapat. First line, this comes in Krishna Yajurvedam, Shukla Yajurvedam. It comes as the first mantra in the Rik, as the first Rik in the Mandalam of Rigvedam. It comes in Samavedam. It comes in two shakhas of the Atharvana Vedam. Sahasra Shirishaf Purushaha. Now the first word is Purushaha. Where do we see the word Purushaha? Outside the men's bathroom. Correct? It will be written Purush. So we understand the word Purush to be male. XY allele. That is Purush. But Vedam doesn't interpret it that way. Sad thing. It says Puru Bahu Sanoti iti Purushaha. The one who is so generous enough giving, the one who generously gives is called Purushaha. So at times, even a Stree can be referred to as Purushaha by this interpretation. One. Agragami Purushaha. When two people walk, whoever walks first is called Purushaha. Agragami iti Purushaha. Puri Shete iti Purushaha. The one who stays within us is Purushaha. Then there is another word. What it says, this Purusha has 1,000 heads. Very good. Our Western, all Brahaspatis will write it. 1,000-headed Purusha. Kama. 1,000-eyed Purusha. Now the problem is coming here. If a head has 2 eyes, shouldn't it be 2,000 eyes? How can there be 1,000 eyes? In most of our Tamil movies, you will have one-eyed Kabali. It is 2 eyes there. Then what do we do for the 2? That is where Sayana mentions that here the eye denotes the ability to see and travel. So whatever activity is performed by every Jivatma is viewed by the eyes of Parabrahman from everywhere. Do not think he stands in silos and is located in one position. So this interpretation of Purusha Sukta is very important. I've taken a lot of time. There are more levels to unravel. Of course, we need to hear from the author himself. And then we have a great Mahavidwan seated. He's saying he's sandwiched. He's the Purnam. Because whenever you make bread slices, you put the Purnam in between, the chutney. Right? And Vedam says Purnam, Purnamadav, Purnamidam. He's the whole. So he's not sandwiched, he's the whole. Let him take it.
Thank you. So that's why he is the most haunted person now by all media people. So every media house now wants to have Dushyant. Okay.
Even I want to listen to him.
Okay. So very beautiful from the tradition, the whole explanation of Purusha. And this is what happens, like unless and until we understand the symbolism, the way of interpretation, as he mentioned that the pitch is high has a different meaning, the pitch is low has a different meaning. That's where the oral tradition kept the Veda mantras alive along with its meaning and to the minutest level of swara. Minutest level of swara. That's one part. At the same time, even though someone does not know the tradition of interpreting it, say for example, like one doesn't know the kaku, doesn't know the udatta, anudatta, swarita, swaras, doesn't know how to recite a mantra, yet has much shraddha and has much love for the Veda, wants to see what is the truth behind the mantras. Tradition also says, and then we have enormous examples that without the knowledge, even an illiterate person having no training can also get into the spirit of the Veda. And then we have enormous examples. I'll give you one example of Vashishta Kavyakantha Ganapati Muni, who is not illiterate, who was a very highly evolved Rishi Muni, and then he came to meet Sri Aurobindo. Not in the context of interpreting the Veda or the Vedic language. So whenever a passage from Sri Aurobindo's Secret of the Veda or Life Divine or the book The Mother was read out to him in English, so Ganapati Muni was highly evolved on one side, but he was completely ignorant of English. He didn't know ABCD of English. He didn't know anything. Yet whatever is read out to him, he would translate it and then speak about it in Sanskrit. That's how he translated much of Secret of the Veda, the book, The Mother. This was a question which intrigued many people, and then some of them asked Sri Aurobindo, how does it happen that this Muni, without the understanding of the language, still could grasp the essence of what you have said in the Secret of the Veda, and then he interprets it? Sri Aurobindo made a comment that whoever is open to the truth will see the truth. Language is not a barrier. Yet, we need to understand the nuances of language. And to understand these nuances of languages, we have our Mimamsa tradition, we have the Vyakarana tradition, we have the Shabdabodha tradition traditionally. Yet Sri Aurobindo has given a new philology, a new science of language. When Subramanya Bharati asked him that we all have studied the Veda, yet we are sitting here and listening to you the same mantras with new interpretation, new etymology. So where from you are bringing this meaning? Sri Aurobindo's answer was, Sri Krishna has shown me a new science of language based on which a new interpretation of the Veda will be made. So I would like Pariksith to comment upon the philological part of Sri Aurobindo and what is reflected in his Secret of the Veda, his philological writings while taking examples from the Veda, and the portion that you have covered in the book.
So, thank you, Sampadanandji. I'm enjoying them better. I would rather not talk, listen to them. But Dushyantji said something beautiful about the Purusha, and Purusha has at least 6 meanings. Purusha is that which resides in this Puri, in this Nagaram, which is our body with 9 doors. Puratah is also one that is in the front. And Kapali Shastriji says this Purusha is actually the Purushottam of the Gita. The Purusha in the Purush Sukta is not an individual Purusha, but it is the Purushottam that is mentioned as the Paramatma by Sri Krishna, as Sri Krishna himself. That was his interpretation. So there are layers and layers of meaning in the Veda, and and the beautiful part is there are root sounds in Sanskrit, bij, dhvani. And the bij dhvani is not intellectually understood. And Sri Aurobindo explained it. In the Sanskrit language, the linguistics, the oldest linguistics, the knowledge of linguistics was in Sanskrit language, where each root sound has its own guna, which means when you hear the sound, it has a certain impact on your vital, on your prana, on your nerves. And we still, even in Tantra, in Yoga, we still use these root sounds. And the resonances of these root sounds creates an impact on us. And of course, when these root sounds come together, that creates a sound resonance that is called the mantra, which is beyond just intellectual meaning, which prepares our mind for meditation, for dhyana. Different layers of these root sounds can create different meanings. And Sri Aurobindo explains how Agni itself has multiple layers of meaning. For example, Swami Dayananda explained Agni as, using Yaska Muni's Nirukta, Agni is that which is agre. And David Frawley says, agre netaraha. That which is in our front, that which leads us. Now, where is Agni leading us? The concept is this is a spiritual journey, and Agni is our leader. Agni is, according to Swami Dayananda, is also the Vachi of Atman and Paramatman, which means Agni is the representative of the higher consciousness, the Atman and Paramatman. Agni is not just external fire, the Bhautik Agni. Agni has multiple layers. And in each loka, Agni has a different manifestation. For example, in the loka, in the Dhyau, in the higher loka, higher mind, it will manifest as lightning or Vidyut Agni. At the level of the Surya, Agni will manifest as Saurya Agni. But this is not a physical Surya. This is the Surya that represents Satchidanand, our highest awareness. And this, as you do dhyana, you will start seeing these symbols. And the symbol of Surya again comes in the Isha Upanishad, Shloka 16 and 17, where the Rishi invokes and the golden lid above the head to remove that so that he can see the Surya. And this comes in the 5th Mandala, 62nd Sukta, first Rik of the Rig Veda, in which it beautifully described how the truth covers itself. Ritena ritam apihitam dhruvam vam. So, Agni here suddenly becomes a multi-layered, multi-dimensional symbol. On the physical level, it's a fire. But at a different level, at a higher mental level, it becomes Vidyuta. At the level of Satchidanand, it is Saurya Agni. At the level of matter, Agni is hidden in the apas or the water, and it is hidden in the samidha, it is hidden in the wood. And that Agni is brought out. Agni is hidden in the Adri, the rock, the Shila, from which Indra, with the help of the Angirasa Rishis and the mantras, brings out that Agni. And that Agni is actually described as Gau, the light that Gau is brought out. Now this Gau is not cow. Gau again has two layers. And Gau in the Veda has the other layer of meaning is light. And this light is the signifier of a higher knowledge, of an awakening, of a seeing. So that's why when we say Gopuram, the entry to a temple, it is not that you're tying cows there. Or you say Gautama, which we also use for the Buddha. It's not a black cow. Gautama means one who is filled with the highest light. Or Gavishtara. Gauri, the one who is bright. So each sound has multiple layers of meaning, and as you beautifully described, Aja, from which Ajgar, the one who eats the goat, Ajgara, is the python. But obviously, Aja can also mean the Brahma himself. So, multi-layered, multi-dimensional meanings, significances of sound, if we understand, then each word has multiple meanings. And the beauty is how they are connected. So, Agni here, it could be in our heart, Agni Pavaka, what Sri Aurobindo calls the psychic being or the Chaitya Purusha. Indra is not some god outside, but Indra is our own luminous mind, higher awareness. And the root of Indra, one of the roots is Idha, which is to burn. And again, you see psychologically how the fire Agni has been connected to Indra. Light, there's a beautiful equation. If you could do some mathematics, light in the Vedas signifies wisdom, knowledge. But at the sound of the, if you go to Surya, the root is Su, which is good. But the root is also Sva, which is the self. So the self, that is the Surya, that is good, that is light, that is unity. In the Veda, the light has multi-layered references and influences on our layers on our consciousness. So, I don't know if that answered your question.
Thank you. It's a lot of things to take into, and most importantly, each and every word has its root sound. Each root sound has multiple layers of experiences behind it, and again, each root sound also has seed sounds inside it. It is formulated by the combination of many seed sounds. That's where when Mimamsakas, they interpret a particular word. So suppose they take the word Agni, so they will go into what does A mean, what does Ga mean, what does Na mean, what does E mean. Sri Aurobindo also followed the same pattern of a Mimamsakas, but added much, deeper dimension to the Mimamsa of the Shabdas. This is the new philology. For example, he gave the word go. Go needs to be understood in its symbolic sense. Otherwise, we will land up translating Goswami Tulsidas as Tulsidas, the husband of the cow, or something else. So go has, layers of meanings. Go means earth. Go means Indriyas. So Goswami can be one who has control over his senses, is Goswami. One who is a seeker of light. Then another beautiful word in the Veda, the most ancient word for research, Gaveshana. The word Gaveshana is an epithet of Indra. But what does it mean? So in its root sense, it means go Eshana. Now if you translate go Eshana and translate go as cow, so all researchers are in search of cows in some field. So this is what the meaning will be. Now Gaveshana is the seeking after the truth. And true research is that when we seek for the truth, to find out the truth. He also mentioned about Agni, Surya, Indra, the various deities. And if we take that last realization of the Veda, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahudha Vadanti, Agni, Indram, Mitram, Varunam. So all these different deities, they have a different form in the later tradition, in the Puranic tradition. And unless and until we understand the symbolism of these deities, it's extremely difficult to interpret the Puranic deities, later deities. That's where also much confusion, much misinterpretation. So you will have a lot of people commenting upon why Ganesha has an elephant head and why this has a horse head. So many other things. And Sri Aurobindo also said that after he came in contact with the Veda, much of the Puranic episodes, characters, event, they made more sense to him after he understood the symbolism behind the different deities. So this is where my question to you for enlightening this august audience is, how do you link the Vedic deities and the Puranic deities, revealing their inner symbolism?
I'll answer Swami's question, before which I have to take it up from where Pariksith ji had left. The last few sentences were revolving around the Shabdam Ajaha. Of course, I did mention about how Vedas interpret whether it is Brahma or the goat. Ajaha generally means, Jakaram generally denotes birth. Ajaha means the one who is unborn. So there is a vakyam which says, Ajaha ajayamano bahudha vijayate. The one who is unborn is born many a times. So Ajaha also means unborn. But in Vishnu Sahasranamam, we have this nama coming again. Ajaha durmarshanaha shasta vishrutatma surariha. What does Ajaha mean there? 1000 years before, the commentator Parashara Bhatta in his commentary called Bhagavad Guna Darpanam states. He says this is the nama for Nrisimha, the devata called Nrisimha. But the meaning is unborn. Then how will he connect this? So in Bhagavad Guna Darpanam, he says, Ajaha doesn't mean unborn. It means the one who is not born like us. Then how do we compare it with Nrisimha? Because most of us, all of us, come from when the water breaks, the amniotic sac crumbles, and then we come out. There is an amnion, there's a chorion, there's a placenta, there's an umbilical cord which is cut. Nothing of this happened to Nrisimha, right? So the pillar broke like a dicotyledon and he emerged. So none of us are born like him. He is not born like any of us. Since he is not born like any of us, he is called Ajaha. So this is the interpretation he gives. Now let me come to Sir's question about how do we link Vedam and our Upabrahmanams, the Itihasas and the Puranas. One of the precursor shlokas to Adi Parva in Mahabharatam is Itihasa Purana Bhyam Vedam Samupa Brahmayet. All our rishis knew our status. So they have cited this verse. If you do not read the Itihasas and the Puranas with true sincerity, Vedas are worried, it seems. It seems Vedas had one roundtable conference. Vedas and the Vedanta. So their concern was asked. In research, we call it TOM, top of the mind recall. What do you recall? So those Vedas and Vedanta immediately said, we are worried about the Homo sapiens in the 19th, 20th and 21st century. What are you so worried about? Immediately the Vedas said, without an understanding of the Itihasas and Puranas, they will interpret me and misinterpret me. This is the shloka. Itihasa Puranabhyam Vedam Samupa Brahmayet Bibheti Alpashrutat Vedat. So the Vedas, they got worried. So the right method in the traditional system that we have learned from our Acharyas is learn Srimad Ramayanam, Sri Mahabharatam, the Puranas first. Even while we begin our Samskrita Patham, he's a great scholar. Ramodantam is how we begin. We begin with Ramodantam, Ramayanam, Mahabharatam. I'll just give you an example. In the Ramayana, which we call it as the Adi Kavyam, in Ayodhya Kandam, we have one anecdote. Rama goes and informs his mother Kaushalya, who is performing Aradhana in the temple of Ranganatha. The Lord of Ranganatha, whom you see in Srirangam in Tamil Nadu, was originally in Ayodhya Main Road, Ayodhya Cross Street. He was in Uttar Pradesh. Then he was later shifted here. He may be repenting now. That is a different thing. So in that temple, Kaushalya was performing Aradhanam. Aradhaya Jagannatham Ikshvakukula Daivatam is Valmiki Ramayana Vakyam. Then Rama comes and informs. Mother have been asked to, there's a small change in the plan. Plan A was supposedly that I will be the heir apparent. Plan B is now gone to where I have to go to the forest for 14 years. She was, of course, very shocked. She started crying. And then Rama said, no, don't worry. 14 years is nothing. I'll just come by then. That time she says, since you're going to the forest for 14 years, I bless you, my dear son. This is in Ayodhya Kandam. I'm sure Shivarur, all those journalists will be there. They'll fact check immediately. Check in Ayodhya Kandam. It will be in 56th Sargam. So there will be one Vakyam where Kaushalya says, she says, since you're going to the forest, my dear son, I bless you with those two verses, which Vinata blessed her son Garuda when he went to Swargam to get Amritam. This is that shlokam. I bless you with those two verses. Then we proceed to the next verses. Those two verses are not there in Ramayana. She says, I will bless you with those two verses. What Vinata blessed her son Garuda with. Where are those two verses? Those two verses are found in Adi Parva of Mahabharata. In Mahabharatam, in the Adi Parva, you've got a Upakhyanam called Vainateya Upakhyanam, the son of Vinata's Upakhyanam. Paksha ute marutaf patu chandra surya ucha prishtataha shirascha patu vanhiste. These two shlokas appear there. So when we think that some people say, I don't like Ramayana, Mahabharata is very interesting. It's like saying, I don't like thermodynamics, I like mass transfer operations. You have to complete all the courses to finish, get your engineering certificate. So these are connected. So Ramayana has a reference to an incident that occurs in Mahabharata. The incident has happened much before, but it is narrated in the Mahabharata. Now let's go to the next level. What does this Garuda have significance to? Garuda is treated as the essence of the Vedic thoughts. Where do we connect this? In Srimad Bhagavatam, there is an incident where Kardama Prajapati performs tapasya. The Lord appears on Garuda Vahanam. And the Lord says, Kardama, it's high time that you get married. In a few minutes after I leave, Swayambhuva Manu will come and will ask you to get married to his daughter, Devahuti. And Devahuti and Kardama get married. Now, when the Lord advises and commands Kardama Prajapati and leaves, the shloka reads in Srimad Bhagavatam, Stoma Mudirina Sama. When Garuda fluttered high, his wings that gave that noise were akin to the sound of Samavedam. So this is found in Bhagavatam. Now let's come back finally to the Vedam. Vedam says, to Garuda the eyes are like the Gayatri mantra. Netram Gayatra Muchehe. His wings are like the Samavedam. So when you have read Ramayanam, when you have read Mahabharatam, when you have read Srimad Bhagavatam, and then you read the Vedas, every line of it will be clearly understandable. So this is important in the temples. That is why whenever you cite and recite Vedas in a temple and then do Kumbhapishekam, immediately the priest will look to the sky to check if Garuda is there. Because the Veda mantras are recited, you seek for Garuda there. So this connection between Agama and Nigama, this connection between Ramayanam, Mahabharatam and Bhagavatam is what gives a wholesome experience of us understanding the Vedas. It is a long journey. People will say it is a long journey. What to do? It is a long journey. Swami Dayananda Saraswati was asked, he once told, if you go to a devout Muslim and you ask him what is your holy book, he would proudly say it's the Quran. You go ask a devout Christian, he would say the Bible. If you go ask a devout Sikh, he would say Guru Granth Sahib. If you go ask a Hindu, what will he say? Welcome to my library. Because we have an entire library of literature. We talk about pluralism. So let's be minimally pluralistic by at least reading those books. That will give us a complete understanding, and we can get rid of all these half-baked understanding of the Western commentators. I'm not meaning all of them. I'm not demeaning any of them. They're all great Brihaspattis. But half of those interpretations we can get rid of. This is my thought. Back to you, sir.
Thank you, and thank you for the interpretation of thank you for the interpretation of the word Aja. In the Bhagavatam itself, this land Bharatam is also called as Ajanabha version. Ajanabha version. So the deities, the symbolism, and in order to understand again the Puranas, the letter tradition, and understand oneself, what the Vedantic tradition gives importance to, that impersonal Brahman, and Yasmin Vijñate Sarvamidam Vijñatam Bhavate. So, and in order to understand like how the rishis, they organized the life, the outer life, one has to have a deeper sense of the Vedic cosmology. So, the explanation that you have given based on Sri Aurobindo, the Vedic cosmology. So please enlighten it to the audience.
Some of the modern writers, and I refer to the Western writers because it's good to know what others are saying about our traditions. And there's a Russian Vedic scholar, Tatyana Eliza Renkova, who translated the Vedas into Russian. And Russian Indology was very strong in those days, and she calls it the model of the universe based on the Veda. The Veda has its own model of the universe, and very simple things. One of the most important things, she calls it isomorphism. This body is a symbol of the universe. So when we say Bhu, Bhuva, Swaha, and these are three layers, three worlds. The Bhu, everyone knows, Bhumi, but it's also the physical, gross physical. Bhuva is the world of the vital, prana. It's also called antariksha. And Swaha, the one is, it's the layer of the mind. Just like we have the three layers, our body, our prana or vital, and the mind. We are a symbol or a hologram, those who like physics, or a fractal of the universe. And I've tried to use these words so that the modern students can understand, use the symbols that they make sense out of. But these three are not enough. There are other layers or other lokas that the Veda describes. This is the aparardha, which is, parardha is that which is beyond. So there are lokas which are beyond us. And since we are the symbol of the universe, those lokas are within us. Those are not somewhere outside another world, some other universe. Those layers are also within us, part of us. We just don't know them. And the whole journey is to find those the three lokas. And between the three lokas is the region which is often referred to as the golden lid in the Isha Upanishad, or sometimes it's called the Satyamritam Brihat, or Sri Aurobindo calls it the supermind. And the journey is, this is the model in which the yagya becomes a symbol of the self-offering. Idamna mama, all the yagya that the divine did, that Purushottam did, that yagya created the universe. So all this is the creation of the Purushottama. Realizing this, that this is from that yagya, in my yagya, I'm giving it back to you. And so it becomes a beautiful symbol of a spiritual existence where we are giving completely whatever, not only whatever we own, but whoever we are. This is one part of the model of the universe, the paradigm that the Veda uses. And then there are multi-layers, multi-dimensional ways of looking at it. And of course, time is limited. So there is more to it, but for that, we need much more research. But if we can understand that the whole universe is right here, the true Veda is right within us. What we like to read is an external manifestation of that paravaka, as the word, the sound that is beyond speech. So I think that should hopefully kind of introduce.
Okay, so this mention of parardha and aparardha, again, if we contemplate on the last realization, ekam sat, that supreme reality, one without second, which represents the unity of consciousness. So belonging to the higher half, the parardha, when it descends down to this aparardha, from the subtlemost level to the grossmost level. So at this grossmost level, this unity of consciousness is almost lost, but essentially it is there. So this is what the Veda, the Tantra, they call it as the involution. So descent of the Supreme from the subtlemost level to the grossmost level. This is the half of the story of the creation. Now, this is paradise lost, and there has to be paradise gained. That this unity of consciousness needs to be regained. This is the story of evolution, and this is a cycle, and this is a constant process, because creation, as per the Veda, is not something which is static, done, once done, and done forever. It's a constant unfolding of the Supreme, that potential. And at every moment, every moment. If you can count time to the minutest level, so something new appearing. That's why the supreme reality has the name Pranava, that ever new. And this whole cycle of, say, God becoming this creation, and then this whatever is there in the creation, making an attempt to become the God or regaining that unity of consciousness. This was symbolically known as yagna. Yajnena yajnamaya janta deva. So the process of yagna, the idea of yagna, and the understanding of yagna in the later period, and the what is known in the Veda as the swam damam, that means the fire room was known as also swam damam in the outer sense, and in the deeper sense it was the world of satyam ritam brihat. And this idea of yajna also creates a problem in many cases. Like, we hear a lot of other kind of interpretations. Sometimes it is the superficial superstition, and whether one should do yajna or not. So can you throw some light on the idea of yajna?
So when we refer to yajna, there are various words that denote a yajna. There are words like kratu. If you had noticed, Mishra ji just, today the word aja is dominating. I don't know why. In his concluding remarks of the previous session, he said, Ajanabhavarisham. So there is one large portion of the Bharata Bhumi which was called Ajanabhavarisham. And Bhagavatam mentions of this while talking in detail about a person called Rishabhanatha. Rishabhanatha is believed to be the partial manifestation of Vishnu. And interestingly, the Adi Purana of Jainism treats him as the first Tirthankara. So this Rishabhanatha had children. The eldest of them was Bharata, who later after 2 Janmas is called Jada. So it is Jada Bharata, and Vishnu Purana attributes Bharata Desha's name to this Jada Bharata. And through another wife called Sunanda, Rishabhanatha has a son called Bahubali. There was one Bahubali then. This Bahubali was called Gomatha by the locals, and that is called Gomatheshwara in Shravana Belagola. So this Ajana Bhavarisham, Aja Shabdam comes from this landmass, and that is associated with Rishabhanatha. Why I brought Rishabhanatha is Rishabhanatha's episode in Srimad Bhagavatam gives an answer to Yajnam. There, Shuka Brahmam says in Panchamaskandam that there were certain yajnas which were performed with Upastambha and some without it, which means that sacrifices of even animals had reduced even by then, that period. It had reduced by then. And this yajna was performed. And now let me go directly to our author, Pariksith ji, who said that there is a philosophical undercurrent that runs behind or beneath every mantra. Upanishad agrees with this. It says, Yo Brahmanam vidadhati purvam yo vai vedamscha prahinoti tasmai tamhadeva matma buddhiv prakaksham mumukshurvai sharanamaham prapadye. So as you keep offering all these things to the Agni, Agnena yasupatharaye, it takes you forward, then the biggest sacrifices give away your Atma to it, which is called Atma Samarpanam or Sharanagati. Mumukshurvair Sharanamaham Prapadye. So the philosophy that the Vedanta, which is a continuum of the Vedas, is besides all these things that you add to fire, which is Archis, give away your Atma. So the underlying meaning of a yajna is to finally realize that the Jivatma is not yours. Idan na mama. This is not mine. This is yours. Na mama becomes namaha, which becomes namaskaram. Whenever we say namaskaram, namaste, we in fact tell the other person, don't think this Atma is mine. It's his. So namama becomes namaha, which is namaskaram. So this is the undercurrent of this. Of course, we have 6 minutes, 40 seconds left. Now you can ask questions, because in the recent times, if people ask questions, people get perturbed and they say they have chest pain. So don't worry. In Indian philosophical systems, you can feel free to ask questions. You will, whether the answers are convincing or not, that is different, but we'll still give you answers. Feel free to ask.
Thank you. So it's open for the question. But before that, uh, the traditional interpretation of the Veda and the new interpretation given by Sri Aurobindo, which reconciles the tradition and the modern, you can say. It helps understanding ourselves. It helps understanding the society. It helps understanding how even the future of this humanity. That's why Sri Aurobindo says that the future of the world rests much on the understanding of the Veda. And that Veda needs to be realized. And as he pointed out, the Veda within, in the vast sense. There is a beautiful line in the Veda which says, Yas tanna Veda kim ruja karishyati. So if one doesn't know this symbolism, doesn't have the sadhana, so what is he going to do with the Veda? He cannot do anything. So with these concluding words, so I open it for question. Most welcome.
This is to Dr. Pariksith ji. This is regarding the symbol swastika. See, people also associate with Hitler also because he himself in his book refers to Hakenkreuz, not really the swastika. So I'm basically asking you about this symbol, whether it comes in Sanatana Dharma or wherever it is. But the issue is that on what basis they try to associate Hitler with swastika. I know, everybody knows he's a great man. He has done great things. But because tomorrow people might be misunderstanding that he's got to do something with Sanatana Dharma. Correct? So that is a big dilemma, I suppose. I'd like you to clarify that.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you too well, but I'll just rephrase the question. The meaning of swastika and how Hitler appropriated it. Is that? So, swastika is one of the most beautiful words in our language in Sanskrit. The sense of swa, the sense of self, is one of the secrets of our journey, of our spiritual journey. Discovering what this self is, who this I is. Different darshanas will bring us back to that, which brings us to the Atman, who we really are. So, Swa Astika, one who is seated in the self, and the symbols, each symbol attempts to give us a meditative focus. So you will see that with the mandalas, you will see that with the yantras. And so swastika, from the little I know, is one of the symbols that has been used traditionally in the Aryan tradition. And when we say Aryan, that is not the Hitlerian Aryan. The root of the word Aryan, as Sri Aurobindo described, Ari is to dig. And the Aryan is the noble person, the one who has a journey towards self-refinement, self-development, and evolution. That is an Aryan according to Sri Aurobindo. And of course, then there are multiple layers. Now, why did Hitler take it? He was smart. He wanted to take over all of the good things that are in the world, and that's what the Asura does. The Asura appropriates the good things from you and then turns it into his or her own use. And that is what we see in modern times, and that is why we need to be aware of what our symbols are and what they mean and go deeper into our own Shrutis and Shastra.
Namaste ji. Ajay, can I convey in Tamil ji? So that ஜி இப்போ ஆதிசங்கராச்சாரியார் வந்து ஒரு மந்திரம் சொன்னா மழை வருது, இந்த கோல்டு ஷவர் ஆகுது, வேத மந்திரம் சொன்னா. இதுவே நாம சொன்னா ஒண்ணுமே நடக்க மாட்டேங்குது. So okay, so for the benefit of those of them who can't understand Tamil, the question was, if Adi Shankara recites certain rik or mantras from the Vedam, it fructifies immediately, whereas it doesn't happen when we say that. Adane kelvi. So, the first level answer is we are not Adi Shankara. Right? Second is, an answer is given by Vedanta Deshika in Rahasya Trayasaram. Sishyargal irukkudiya abhimana paratamyatalire idu. A teacher dispenses the same knowledge to 4 students. One is able to recollect even the same thing at the age of 80, the other one forgets at the age of 30. The Acharya asks why, to which he answers, Abhimana Taratamyatal. The quantum of you remembering your knowledge is directly proportional to the respect that you have on your teacher. How much, he says, Abhimana Taratamyatal. How much you respect your teacher, so much you will be able to remember. What it essentially means is, how much ever we learn the Veda Suktas, it is important for us to believe in them. That's very important. And our sadhana, our personal character determines a lot for those mantras to fructify. It is our own sadhana which will help. So Adi Shankara led a life of sheer sannyasam. So that tapo shakti gave him that jnanam, and that made those mantras fructify. So in simple, our sadhana only will help us realize our mantras. Yeah. Puranjudta? That's it.
So that brings us to the end of this session. Thank you.